Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you tonight. Just got off work, came home. Boom! It's Super DVD Tuesday. Here we are with the Blu-ray release from WWE. This is Shawn Michaels Mr. Wrestlemania. There's Shawn Michaels right there, the epic picture of WrestleMania 12. Shawn Michaels finally reaching the top of the WWE after working so hard as that sort of mid-card tag team wrestler, finally breaking through as a single star, making his way through the Intercontinental title mid-card rank like that, and then finally, boom, there he is. I mean, Shawn Michaels, one of the most complete wrestlers I ever watched as a kid growing up. Like I said, I mean, like, when I started watching wrestling, this guy was a bottom of the end tag team wrestler that never really reached the top, never really had the time to become a tag team champion, and then we all know what happened to Marty. Marty got thrown through the barbershop window. And from there, Shawn went on to mid-card Intercontinental title, status where he became a star. And then from there, he rose his way up the top. Honestly, when Shawn Michaels was the boy toy, I never really was a fan of him. Him and the whole heel, with Sherry. I just didn't get it. I mean, I just really hated this guy. And not like I hate wrestlers now today just because they just don't get over and they don't go with me. Just like, I honestly hated Shawn Michaels. I didn't know what he stood for. I really didn't know what the meaning of the word gay was. But to me, Shawn Michaels was gay. That's the only way I can describe how I thought of Shawn Michaels back in the day. And just now, I can't believe how much when I watch this guy's matches, he blows me away. There's not really too much on this set that's really going to push the envelope to make you want to really buy this. You either, you want to have this in your collection or you don't. I mean, most people like me are already going to have these sets. I mean, like, there's the DVD collection you can see up there on the wall is the WrestleMania anthology. So it's not like we're really missing anything here on these sets. But if you roll through it real fast, you just walk down memory lane of Shawn Michaels. And the one thing I want to get off of here is the discussions in between the matches to see what really comes out of there. Like right here, you have a walk down memory lane going to New York, and that goes into WrestleMania 5, talking about the Rockers versus the Twin Towers. We have the popcorn spot with them against the Orient Express. We'd love to hear anything they have to say about the Orient Express. One of my favorite tag teams. They really never really achieved any success, and you don't really ever hear anybody talk about the Orient Express. So even to hear Shawn Michaels talk for him, even if it's for 30 seconds, is going to be awesome to me. And we have championship aspirations going up against Haku and the Barbarian. Time to make a split. That's when the Rockers split up. Maybe we'll get to see the barbershop window there. Shawn Michaels versus Tito Santana. Good match at WrestleMania 8. Of course, right then he was El Matador. Then we go into WrestleMania 9, one of my favorite WrestleManias. I mean, nothing on there is really spectacular, but just being an outdoor event with the whole toga theme and everything, I really like to watch that Mania every now and then. Nothing really spectacular on it, but this Shawn Michaels versus Tatanka match, I believe, was the opener. I think that Shawn was the opener a few years in a row. Right here. I'm pretty sure that the Tito match was an opener as well. But this was an Intercontinental title match. He was the champion. A lot of people have said that Shawn Michaels used a little bit of his pull. I mean, the click wasn't the click yet. This is only 93. But Tatanka tells the story like he was supposed to win the strap that day, and he didn't find out till later. But I guess Shawn already had Vince's ear in 93. Then we have Shawn Michaels versus The Ladder. Of course, the match that made him a star at WrestleMania 10 against Razor Ramon. That match, launched him into the main event scene. Of course, he wins the Royal Rumble that January, and then there he is, Shawn Michaels versus Diesel at WrestleMania 11. It's funny how Razor is the guy who wins WrestleMania 10. Spoiler alert: the match was 20 years ago. So I mean, like, honestly, if you didn't know, that's your own fucking fault. But Razor never really went up from there. I mean, he stayed in that Intercontinental spot, of course, 2 years, and then he was wrestling for WCW, and you could say that he rose up the ranks. He never really became a single star for them. He won the United States Championship. He won the TV title. He won the tag title with Kevin Nash multiple times. Became one of the biggest names in wrestling, but never really won the strap. Was always the guy behind Hogan. So who knows what would have happened if Razor Ramon were to stay in WWE, WWF at the time. But, Shawn goes on to WrestleMania the next year, doesn't get the win over Diesel. They stay with Diesel. But then the next year, WrestleMania 12, Shawn Michaels versus Bret the Hitman Hart. They had so much faith in these guys. 1 hour Iron Man match. This match, to me, honestly, if you've seen it once, you've seen it 1,000 times. That's all you really need to see. It goes down to the wire. It goes into sudden death. I love the storyline that it goes off with Bret Hart where he feels like he was screwed because, it goes to sudden death. No one really put that on the table that was going to happen. But, this is WrestleMania. They need to find a winner. Shawn gets the win out of the middle of nowhere. I think it comes like 3 minutes into sudden death. And Bret is pissed. And, of course, that goes off into his storyline where he becomes, what the fuck am I talking about? I forgot. But, of course, that goes into, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, which launches Stone Cold up the card even more. But a whole much starts right here at WrestleMania 12. Of course, due to injuries and losing his smile, Shawn doesn't wrestle at 97. Of course, they say that it's because they told him he was going to lose to Bret that year. So he just said, fuck it, I ain't wrestling. And then he goes to Shawn Michaels versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Of course, this is his last match before he leaves WWE for 6 years to head on out into the retirement role. And then he finally finds his smile again, comes back to WWE. And that's pretty cool because it starts the second disc of the Blu-ray. And, of course, that's when he, Young into Salvation. It's him versus Jericho. Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, which is one of my favorite wrestling matches of all time. Anything that he can say about that match is going to be awesome. The Boss is an idiot. Then you have Shawn Michaels versus McMahon. You have Shawn Michaels versus John Cena in the main event. That goes to Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair, Disney World, and then it sucks. I don't know what that is, but it's going to be talking about Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Then we have The Dive, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker again. Oh, that's got to be talking about when Taker breaks his neck. Oh, God, that's not part of the match, and I finally find that out now that they really were dying for time. I'm going to put this in as soon as I'm done, and I'm watching that part right now. And then we have the retirement at WrestleMania there in 2010. I was lucky enough to attend that as my first WrestleMania. We have the Blu-ray exclusives down here where the Rockers talk about the Twin Towers. Shawn Michaels with Rhonda Shear and Pamela Anderson. Then we have Shawn Michaels and Sid talking about Nicholas Cicerto. That's the guy from fucking NYPD Blue. We have Shawn Michaels post-interview match. That's from WrestleMania 19. After getting hit in the nuts. I'm sure that's a DVD exclusive. They just popped them in here. Then we have Shawn Michaels says goodbye backstage from WrestleMania 26. And we just had some random stories about leaving the company because you're a girl. One demand for Rick. The Ric Flair watch. Hell to pay. At least the dude's got some balls. The end of an era. Mr. WrestleMania versus The Streak. The Shawn Michaels Encore Tour. WrestleMania wish list, Flair, Michaels, and Jericho. I don't know what that is, but that's a must-watch right there. This is the stuff right here. I mean, this part right here. Blu-ray exclusives. Honestly, in my mind, this is the stuff that's not going to be loaded onto the network. Once the network comes up in a month, in 2 weeks, whatever it is, I'm sure you'll get these big bulk of matches. Even if you have to go into all the WrestleMania ones and watch them one by one. But this stuff, I'm guaranteeing that's what's going to keep DVDs alive. It's because you want the extra content. Boom. Back to Shawn again on the floor, checking himself out in the ring there. It's his ring. Get out of my ring. There he is, checking out the title. Can't believe it's his. Blu-ray exclusives include pre- and post-match footage, plus bonus interview footage, and just a whole bunch of stuff. WrestleMania, The Icon, The Heartbreak Kid, The Rockers, and Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Bret the Hitman Hart, Razor Ramon, The Dead Man, and so much more. Right there, from beginning to end, Mr. Wrestlemania, Shawn Michaels, the man himself. Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you. This is the review of Shawn Michaels Mr. Wrestlemania, the DVD set that came out just Tuesday of this week. Honestly, I'm going to start out this review by talking about something that's completely different than what I've got you on the hook for to come here. I listened to the Wrestlemania podcast today, which was hosted by Renee Young. She's going to be talking to previous Wrestlemania stars, and the very first episode was with Shawn Michaels. I downloaded the other day. I checked it out today and I listened to it, and honestly, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Honestly, with Renee Young, I know a lot of people really, really like her, and I've always thought that she was just a hot blonde chick that they hired that had like some sort of a journalistic background. Maybe she did some late night news somewhere. I just didn't know that she was a wrestling fan, that she used to watch wrestling, and that's why they brought her in. She knew a lot about Shawn Michaels' career that I didn't know about. There were stories on the Wrestlemania podcast that were not on the Wrestlemania disc set itself. I felt that honestly he told a better story on there because it was more give and take of asking and answering questions and being led to talk about certain things instead of just Shawn sitting there. And I'm sure they said, all right, talk about this now, and he would talk about that for as long as he could. But the WrestleMania podcast was good. This DVD was good itself. I really liked the stories that Shawn did, even though they were a minute, 2 minutes tops before each one. The opening of this set was a walk down memory lane. This was filmed in Pittsburgh in 2013. I'm guessing for a Monday Night Raw or something like that he was there. I don't know why they would fly him to Pittsburgh. Honestly, when I started this set by watching Disc 2 before I watched Disc 1, mostly because I wanted to see the matches that were at the end of his career, and I wanted to hear their stories more than I wanted to hear about the ones at his beginning. And when I put it in, it was a very, very good open. He was walking down the thing, and he was just saying they were going to be there for a long time because he had a lot of matches and a lot of stories to share. He sits down in a room, in a hotel room, and they just present him with an iPad, and he just presses play, and he starts watching these matches, and you're watching clips of him watch his matches and talk to the iPad like he's talking to the people that's there. He's talking to Jannetty as he's watching the match, and just you see the big smile on his face when it starts to play, and you see the Rockers promo from, I believe, WrestleMania 5 before their match, and he's just like, man, we were good. We were really, really good. And then he's chanting along for himself with JR, and then he's complimenting JR about like when he says, "Oh, down goes Michaels," when Michaels gets knocked out by Tyson, and it's just that big fight feel of everything that comes along with Jim Ross and that whole era of wrestling that he was the voice of. I mean, for me, I got a lot of different voices because I've lived through so many guys. I know people that are a little bit older than me that love the sound of Gordon Soley, but I only heard him for a very, very little amount of time, and that was on WCW, which was not my number one choice of wrestling. But I do hear that voice, and I know that it is a great voice. But I grew up with Vince and Jesse, Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. You know, I've had all of these influences, but Jim Ross to me always will have the voice of the biggest feel of the biggest matches, mostly because in my teenage years is when I saw a lot of the guys that I was growing up with, like Shawn Michaels, having their biggest matches, and those are the ones that I felt very, very connected to. I know that like with Hogan, you know, the body slams and stuff like that at WrestleMania 3, I had the big feel for it. But I don't know, with Shawn, I always really connect as the one guy that I said in my, I was showing off the set the other day. He was the one guy that I watched like through the minor leagues, like of tag team wrestling, moving up to the intercontinental ranks, and that's for like getting your debut, and then being the main eventer, like the MVP of the league, and then moving on to the Hall of Fame. It's like watching, like who is somebody like when I first really started watching and getting into sports, maybe like watching somebody like Michael Jordan. I didn't really see him all the way through, but like LeBron James, like watched him like in high school games when they would show him on ESPN. He didn't go to college, but then going into the draft and him having so much of a spotlight in him and moving into being one of the best basketball players there is today. I mean, that's the way to relate to watching Shawn Michaels. There's not a whole bunch, there's a good story about him and Marty, how they got signed and getting in, and it's, I don't know. I mean, like, it's not as good as the Heartbreak and Triumph. I believe that's the name of his documentary set that has the actual documentary on there about them having to go through. But it's a good story about how they got to WrestleMania, and they knew that it was a big deal, but because they were so young and so dumb, and they thought they knew everything in the world about how to make wrestling work, they thought they were the best in the world. I mean, there's 1,000 guys probably like Shawn Michaels back in those days, and in the WWE today, it's easy to relate to a guy like Dolph Ziggler, who I bet you believes every word he said in that promo, even though I believe it was scripted for him, about nobody can touch him, nobody can top him. But you just have to get that time and that seasoning and just wait for that right spot in order to, boom. I mean, like WrestleMania 5, I'm sure that Shawn and Marty thought they were the best thing in WWF at the time and just needed their time to shine, but it wasn't for 5 years till WrestleMania 10 that Michaels actually got his spot. With the match with Razor. They're just grateful to be on the card, but they said that they probably weren't making any friends when they were, him and Marty were, messing around, staying up all night, earning their man card, and just going through the spots. They didn't really say anything about the Orient Express. I was really marking out for the stories about that. And then they get to WrestleMania 7. And when they get to there, the Rockers were feeling like, they should have been tag team champions by this spot. They've been a big name in the WWF for 2 years. And they were really hoping that WrestleMania 7 was going to be the time that they really got their time to shine and win the titles. Instead, they end up facing Haku and Barbarian. They said that even though they didn't get their time to get the belts, which they felt like it was their time, they were main eventing, not main eventing, but, they were the last match at house shows. They were the go-home match. And, at least even if they weren't going to be given the tag championships, they were given the nod of the approval, from basically the locker room and everybody that was with them, to say, hey, you're it. From then, he goes into a big story about Marty and them breaking up over the payoff for the cereal commercial for, back in the day, I believe it was called WWF Superstars. I ate a few boxes of those back in my day. They used to come with little awesome flip books of watching the Superstars do their moves. I remember having an Ultimate Warrior one. I remember having one for the Legion of Doom. And, good stuff. Some moron had these boxes. I found them in my bedroom when I moved back in 2002. And I believe I tossed them out. Dumbass. I'll have to check. I think I know where I have my Wheeze, Michael Jordan boxes. But I think that I tossed out the WWF cereals from back in the day. Then it goes into him, becoming the superstar that he is in the mid-card. And he's just happy to be, given a spot as a singles guy, molding. They don't really talk about, Marty falling off the face of the earth after the Rockers breaking up, but then, he's sort of like, he's in the opening match one year, and then he's in the opening match again the next year. It's sort of like, you're on WrestleMania, you're the Intercontinental Champion, but you feel like you're being painted into a corner as the guy who's just a good wrestler that's able to get people off their feet. You're not really going to be moving up any more than that. You're going to be stuck in that opening role, which is almost sort of like what Tito Santana was for years, which was so funny that they faced each other at WrestleMania 8. Tito was that guy that was able to kick off shows all the time. Great wrestler, but, I mean, honestly, I think he won the tag titles, he won the Intercontinental title, but for as good as wrestler as Tito Santana was, he never really got the due of how great he was. WrestleMania 10, they go into a great detail about that, and Shawn talks about the critics of that match, who says that Shawn Michaels goes out there and he wrestles a ladder for 30 minutes, and nobody really gives Scott Hall or Razor Ramon their due, and he really puts Razor over 1,000 times, just saying that Razor was a much bigger guy than he was, and he was one of those guys that went out there with Shawn and helped them get the bigger guys respect, that a lot of guys wouldn't bump for the small guys and this, that, or the other. Really, really good stories about WrestleMania 11. Shawn's happy to be moving into that main event role because he is wrestling for the WWE Championship. But even though it's the main event for the WWE Championship, it's not on last, and that's the spot that he wants to be. He wants to be on last. He wants to be winning the title. And Vince is the one that went and he said, "Hey, I want you to super kick Diesel, and I want him to kick out at 1." That's your finisher. That's the move that's in setting up the match, is that Shawn kept on, hitting Diesel, right on the chin with that super kick and knocking him out and leaving him laying. But here it is, WrestleMania, the biggest night of them all, and you want Diesel to look strong by kicking out at 1 from the guy's super kick, and they show him do it, and Diesel kicks out, and he's still just laying there on the ring, and Shawn's like trying to sell the fact that he kicked out at 1, and he looks up at the sky like, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do now? And everybody starts booing Diesel. Everybody starts rooting for Shawn, which leads Vince to do like a split decision real fast. We're on Raw the next night. Sid comes out and just powerbombs Shawn 1,000 times, which turns him face, and that's not what it's not what he was looking to do. They did a topic called "Such a Blur." Where they talk about Shawn Michaels against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14. And Shawn basically apologizes, saying that, he didn't really know what the fuck was going on. Anything in the lead up, he doesn't remember any of the angle which got them to WrestleMania. But just basically, Hunter is the guy that did everything. They did the house shows. Basically, WrestleMania, if you went to any of those house shows, which was Stone Cold Steve Austin against Triple H, they basically just reran the whole match. Triple H just led Michaels through it. This is what we've been doing, and that's just the same one that they did there at Mania, and just happened that it just happened that Mike Tyson happened to be there. Just, they showed the bump, which ended his career from the Royal Rumble, and I always see that, it's just like, he goes over the top, and his back just seems like it just barely hits that casket. It's just hard to believe that's the one spot that took Shawn Michaels out of the WWF, WWE for so long. Disc 2 starts up just with them talking about him and Jericho. And the way that he tells the story, it's so funny. It seems like it wasn't even on paper that Michaels was going to wrestle Jericho. Michaels came back and said, "I'll do whatever I have to do in order to help." That's how he started doing the NWO angle, and he'd be the commissioner, and this, that, and the other, which led to him finally coming back. And, he wrestled, he became the champion, and that was sort of the end of the storyline. But then they were doing these Michaels and Jericho promos, but it really wasn't ever put on paper that, like, Michaels is going to wrestle Jericho. But people kept on saying, like, there's a connection there, there's something behind this. You have to build up on top of this. This is money to be made, which led to him coming back and doing the Mania match, and just how big and how awesome that was. I never knew that part of the story. I always thought on paper they just, Jericho was always a big Michaels fan. They're two guys that are much alike. Let's just put them in a match and see what happens. And it ends up being a great, great WrestleMania classic that everybody looks back on year after year. Michaels and Angle. Michael puts Kurt Angle over like $1 million. I mean, he just says there's nobody out there that prepares like Kurt Angle, who knows professional wrestling as well as he knows everything about amateur wrestling, and just that match, it really is as good as everybody says it is. He says that he's the one who put in. He said, "I'm going to lose the ankle. I'm going to lose the angle via the ankle lock." And he said that was the one ending they could have to the match that just nobody expected it. Michaels likes his match with Vince McMahon. He says that, honestly, he liked going into that match at WrestleMania 22 because he knew that, he's wrestling Vince. Vince knows he's not good, but Vince knows that he can, milk a crowd and get everybody to get behind it. With Vince and Michaels, the pressure was off of Shawn, but Shawn still wanted to go off on there and have the best match that he could. And I mean, like, when you look at WrestleMania 22, there's some good stuff on there, but Shawn did it again. He finds a way, even though he's wrestling Vince, to rise above. He tells a story about the ladder that they used for the final spot. He looked at it and he saw it before, during the walkthrough, and he said, "Don't put that ladder down there. It's too big. I ain't doing it. That's not gonna happen. And then he goes down there to pull the fucking thing out, and he's just pulling on it, and it keeps coming, and it keeps coming, and he's like, fuck, they put the damn ladder down there. But that's it. He talks about how his match with Cena was the one reason he was glad that he came back to wrestling. He says that, you know, it was the polishing that John Cena needed, and you know, that when he said that, I'll come back, I'll give you as much help as you guys need, just tell me what you need me to do. And Jim Ross put it best when he was like, well, it looks like John Cena's finally going to finishing school. And WrestleMania 23 to me is you know, like is one of those matches that really puts the top on the career of Cena. You know, being able to beat Michaels, you know, Mr. WrestleMania. Even though he kept going after that, it was sort of, you know, Cena never really had somebody pass him the torch until he finally beat The Rock at WrestleMania 29. But I think more people should look at this WrestleMania 23 match as sort of like the coming of. To me, I didn't really notice. Like, I was on board with everybody hating John Cena until I saw him beat Batista at WrestleMania 26. That's when I really said he took the torch from Vince, since basically Batista at 26 was Vince's guy. And I thought that was a story. But, you know, when you're watching these, he talks for a few minutes and then the match starts. And this is one of those matches that sucked me in. It happened a few times. I just wanted to watch what he had to say, and then, you know, you're 10 minutes into a match, and you're like, well, I've already watched this fucking much, I might as well watch the whole damn thing. Going from there, a whole bunch of this was poured into the whole Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair match. He talks about it, you know, just being a fan of his. I believe he says that Flair is 15 years older than Michaels is. So, I mean, he honestly really did watch this guy growing up. And it was, you know, on the lead up to WrestleMania, one of his friends that he used to watch wrestling with when he was a kid growing up just calls him up and just says, you know, I really just can't believe that this is going to be happening. I mean, we used to sit in your living room and we used to watch, you know, Flair wrestle at the Sportatorium, I believe is where they used to saw him down there with World Class, I believe is where they were talking about seeing Ric Flair, and he's the guy who's going to have Ric Flair's final last match. And people have said what they've said, that Michaels is really mad about it, but he just sort of he says it best. He knew that Flair was going to do what Flair had to do to make money. It wasn't like he was going to retire from wrestling, go home and not, you know, do it ever. It's, you know, it's in his blood. It's what he's always done. But he knows that Vince and the people in charge are never going to let Flair have another WrestleMania match. And as long as it's not a WrestleMania match, Michaels is basically saying, it's all okay. You know, you do what you got to do. It's wrestling. It's what you've done. You know, it's forever. It's in your blood. And I understand it, but there's never going to be anything, you know, bigger than, you know, WrestleMania 24. When basically Michaels told him, you know, I love you, I'm sorry, and he kicked him. And it was done, and it was over. Of course, you would think there's a whole bunch of stuff about Shawn Michaels and Taker from 25 and 26. Michaels honestly thought he should have retired at 25. He said you just honestly couldn't wrestle a more perfect match. And he sort of looked at the build-up to WrestleMania 26 as like the goodbye. And they had even planned like an encore tour where it seemed like maybe Michaels wouldn't wrestle on TV, but Michaels would wrestle house shows, and this was sort of a deal that he had set up with Michael Hayes. And right after he came back through the gate at WrestleMania 26, I'm sure you've seen the footage. You can either see it on this DVD, or I think I've seen it on YouTube in the past, where he comes through the curtain and it's him and Hunter, Vince, Stephanie, and just basically he goes through the whole locker room and he's talking to me at Michael P.S. Hayes, and it's just, to me, it was always funny that, he would hang on to Hayes and talk so long, but he was trying to get the words out that he didn't want to do it anymore, and Hayes was understanding and just saying, hey, it's done, it's squashed, don't worry about it. They just, it wasn't worth the money that there was to be made. He knew that there was money left on the table to be made by wrestling in those house shows, but you really honestly couldn't top what you saw at WrestleMania 26 that night. From the bonus features and the bonus stories, honestly, nothing was really as good as I thought it was going to be. I thought that when I read on there, it said the Rockers talk about the Twin Towers. I thought they were actually going to bring Marty in and they were going to talk about that match. It's just their promo that they did at the show. It's already on your WrestleMania 5 DVD that you own, and then the stuff from WrestleMania 10 is just that stuff. WrestleMania 11 is the same thing that's there. It's not like, I thought it was going to be like a backstage segment, which they were doing. The WrestleMania, I don't know what the fuck that is. That'd be WrestleMania 19 XIX. That looks like something that was posted on WWE.com that was put onto there. I don't remember that being on the DVD. They honestly should have gone to that WrestleMania 19 documentary and put that chapter on here. If you buy WrestleMania 20, the 3-disc set, you get that documentary from WrestleMania 19. I don't think anything as far as a wrestling DVD is as good as that. That is fucking gold. I don't care if you love or you hate WrestleMania 19. You watch that documentary, I believe it's called The Mania of Mania. I mean, that's going to be real, real good stuff. You go through your special features on the backside. Nothing was really that spectacular. That's where I got the WrestleMania Shawn Michaels Encore story from, with him, wrestling the house shows. WrestleMania versus Streak, he talks about, who really is Mr. WrestleMania, if it's, Taker, who has never lost at Mania, or if it's Shawn Michaels, basically the guy who wrestled it all and he lost more than he won, but, at the end of the day, people pointed at it and said that's the match of the night. He talks about the Flair watch, basically just saying like, hey, I'm the one who bought the fucking watch. It should be called the Shawn Michaels watch. Because You're a Girl is a story about him crying and just feeling like a wuss when he wrestled Flair. And he talks about his WrestleMania wish list. I know at the War Games at the end, I think Dusty Rhodes books his dream match for War Games using guys from today. Just, he basically says, the two matches that really got away that he wished he could have done at WrestleMania to make him have that big feel is he feels that the fans really wanted to see him wrestle Sting, that could have been something, which is pretty funny because I've never really heard of anybody really saying that they wanted, Sting brought into WWE for a match before. That's the first really the request that I've ever heard from one of those guys, especially him. And he says that he really wanted to have a match against Rock. Of course, I don't think there is a match between The Rock and Shawn Michaels, and people say that's because of, Shawn treated him like a dick when he was in those last days around WrestleMania 14, and Rock never forgave him for it. I'm not 100% sure you can even find much footage of them being in the same place at the same time. But that's the only story that I've ever heard. But I honestly do recommend watching this. I had fun. I mean, like, if you just want to watch Michaels matches, he doesn't really have a surefire, greatest hits match. Like, he says that he stays out of the creative decision on making the DVDs. And, whatever they want to, put on there is whatever they want to put on there. Brett came to them and said, I want to pick these matches. He made his Best There Is, Best There Was, Best There Ever Will Be compilation, and then he picked his matches personally for the Dungeon collection, which I believe, in my opinion, never should have been released. It was a very, very bad set. But, Shawn says you just do what you want to do, and I'm looking because I'm trying to find Shawn's spot on my shelf, and he's got a whole bunch of DVDs. I know that one. That much. I know he has the Boyhood Dream, which isn't that good, but has some good matches on there. He's got From the Vault, which is an alright set as well. He's got Heartbreak and Triumph. He's got My Journey. And then he's got that Superstars collection. So I believe this is the 6th set of Shawn Michaels that's been released. But there is no real, this is the greatest shit Shawn Michaels has ever done. It's just sort of like a collection of matches all just sort of groomed up there. And I mean, if you want to sit down and you want to watch the best of Shawn, I mean, there's no better than, I think, this disc 2 of the Blu-ray here, where you start out with the Jericho, then you go to Angle, the Vince match you might want to skip over, but then you have Cena, Ric Flair, and the both Taker matches. I think they'll stand up over time, and I'm glad that I bought this. You say what you want to say about moving into the new era with the network coming out in 2 weeks, but this is a good set, and I apologize for going almost 25 minutes, but I don't think a lot of people are going to buy this set, and I just wanted to let people know what was on here, and that I give it the thumbs up of approval. Peace out.